And so I was just like, I don't want to like. It's already recording. Look, I don't want to like.
People think that it's also Italian, which I'm like, where does that even come from?
Yeah.
But people with origins, they just, especially in America, like people get all crazy about stuff that they don't really get too crazy. Yeah.
Especially like, you can hold the mic now. He said he's recording.
Oh, okay.
We're just gonna. Yeah. We'll just keep on.
Oh, right here's where we talk.
Yeah.
This is cool.
So the whole like name thing in like America, it's funny because I call it like, I don't this isn't the word, I'm not like speaking in an absolute, but like it's funny, it's like this like accidental racism that I've kind of experienced whenever like, white people will try to pronounce my last name and then they like make jokes about it. Oh, it sounds like this, because my last name is Murillo.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, I can't say that. I'm going to call you whatever I feel like I should call you because I can pronounce it better this way. And so just to the point of, I understand the whole like last name thing and so like sometimes like I used to grow up and be like, oh, my last name is Murillo. And so someone corrected me. They're like, no, you got to tell them your last name is Murillo.
It's Murillo.
It's not Murillo. It's
100%.
not Murillo. It's like, I'll let you slide by saying Murillo because sometimes you can't, they can't roll the R or whatever. But it's like you need to tell them, my name is Anthony. You're telling Murillo. Like, tell them Murillo. Yeah. And if they can't pronounce it, that's fine. But
I think like that's exactly it, right? Like the repetition has to be important from everybody coming through, because you can't really show people the culture or show that you stand in solidarity with the culture and your identity if you always succumb to saying like, I'm going to accommodate you because your discomfort or inability to even try to meet me where I'm at. It's like, my parents are immigrants, right? So like I have literally, and I grew up having like a pocha accent, right? Like I spoke English and Spanish together, and I always had an accent. And like my grandparents, they came here like in the 60s. So they had a lot of discrimination for speaking Spanish. So they wanted us to speak like perfect English. And if we spoke Spanish, it was going to be perfect Spanish. And one thing that I realized is that like I had to change my entire accent. Like I don't speak pocha anymore or Spanglish.
Yeah.
Because I was taught to accommodate this country so I wouldn't have discomfort, or like I would grow with the system, right? Like I would be accepted by the system. I'd be able to like excel in school, be seen as smart. And it's like I've had to rearrange my entire life coming into this country and assimilate. So for you to disregard any part of my identity and not be able to meet me where I'm at is honestly really messed up, because I've accommodated my entire life to literally accommodate your life and like your culture and this country that you technically stole from Mexicans in the first place, you know?
Yeah.
So I totally am with you there, because it's so small. Like it's the smallest form of respect and love that you can give.
It's like the least thing you could ever possibly do for a person.
Absolutely.
Of color, right?
100%.
It's like that's the least you could possibly do. And like, I feel like in situations for you not even to try, that's like, come on,
Yeah. And honestly, and I think like the history of this country, like where we're at, like obviously like we want to be, I feel like it's really sweet that you even said like, I get it. Like you have not been familiarized with rolling the R's with your tongue. So like, I totally get it there. But if you just even try to meet me, like instead of saying Murillo, it's like saying Murillo a little bit, or Murillo, or like a little bit, like, it means the world to know that like you at least acknowledge my identity and my cultural heritage. So I agree. I think there's like a part of it. And like now I accept people saying like Victoria more than I do, saying like, oh yeah, my name is Victoria. It's just, it also feels more sacred now. And I didn't feel that way because I used to be super whitewashed.
Yeah.
Because again, I grew up in I grew up having to go to an American school system where I wasn't seen as smart unless like I spoke the language a very specific way. And now that I'm kind of like breaking away, as I've gotten older, I've just connected way more with my roots. TikTok has taught me to connect with my roots. And now I'm like, nah, it's like I'm fully embracing this for the people in my ancestry who couldn't do this, right? Like my grandparents, my parents. Although my mom is like an anomaly. She's not lost that accent in like the 20-something years that she's been here. Very heavy accent, very proud Mexican woman. It's like, she will tell you, soy 100% mexicana, no voy a cambiar nada. And she has like that heavy accent everywhere she goes, lets people know exactly what she's about. And she doesn't try to even like sound, She's
just herself.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's the beautiful thing about like having people around you like that, especially like when it's like your mom or like an uncle or dad that you're, people that you're close to that you see are standing strong on that, because you need that. you need that. You need to see that. Okay, like she didn't back down or they didn't back down. So like, why should I back down? Like, let me be proud of like where I'm from, where my people. Because like a lot of the times, even though like, so my parents, I didn't grow up with a dad. So my mom was, she was born here. She's super like Chicana, very.
I love that.
She's super like Tex-Mex, like she's like El Phoenix, like, you know what I mean? So like she can speak Spanish. She, her parents, my grandparents are from Mexico, and so she can speak Spanish both very fluently. But she's very Chicana. She was born in Hidalgo. Like one funny thing about people in the valley is you would think they speak the most fluent Spanish ever since they're so close to Mexico, but like my experience in Hidalgo was like the complete opposite. Like nobody spoke Spanish over there, which was very surprising. But anyways, it makes sense that my mom is from there. Is what it like.
It's so crazy, Tony, because like in El Paso, it's like 50-50, right? A lot of people speak perfect Spanish or they don't speak it at all. Like they don't, right? And I agree because I'm from El Paso, I'm from the border.
Okay.
So like I experienced a lot of that too. And I studied linguistics in college. It was my minor. So I found a lot of healing during my college years because studying language and understanding its natural phenomena, like it made me mourn a lot because I was sad that I lost like this Spanglish accent that I had, and I was always called pocha. It actually almost stopped me from learning Spanish because I was always bullied by my cousins. Like I go to Chihuahua and they'd be like, Victoria no sabe hablar español. Like, they would always tell me, es tan pocha. Like, and I really didn't want to learn Spanish at one point. If I didn't have a mom who was like really firm and stern about like, I'm going to have kids who speak perfect Spanish, like I would have given up. Yeah. She said that I was the hardest one out of my 3 sisters. Like they both speak way better Spanish than me. Like at this point, I don't even care about the criteria.
Yeah.
If people understand me, they understand me, right? And the point is across, then we're good. But I just, there's so much healing for me in those college years because I didn't realize how much identity comes with language. And language is so powerful. And when a colonizer comes, the first thing that they do is they try to take away the language and remove the language from people, because if they can't connect to their cultural heritage, their cultural or native tongue, then they can remove a portion of them and the rest of it's easy to take away. Yeah. So like every conquistador, every colonizer, the Spanish came, they did that to Mexico, right? So a lot of us don't speak indigenous tongues because of Spain many years ago. And then it's like English is the same thing with England. They came and they colonized. The first thing they do is wipe away the language so that we forget those mother tongues that connect us to our ancestors or just our unique identity. Yeah. So knowing that there was so much work done to remove Latinaje from people, like, and their indigenous roots, like the fact that we still like speak language and some people even speak other like tongues is insane. And it's like so powerful to see that after years and years of like erasure, oppression, marginalization, like you still have people who are still speaking these native tongues, which just speaks to us as a people. And right now, because Mexicans have embraced Spanish, if we preserve it and we still bring it here and like we're dominating and we're becoming like the #1 buying power in the US, like all of that is powerful. And that's why there's so much fight against people speaking Spanish or any other language that's not English in the US, which by the way, I learned in linguistics that there's no official language in the US. So technically any language is official language and is up for grabs. Yeah. There's no official language in the US.
And the irony with like the whole thing about, official languages or speaking a different language in the US is that the country is so like free to be you. Yeah. But it's like the irony of free to be you at my convenience.
Exactly.
Like, and it's just like, come on, man. That's not what that means. That's not what that means. And so like I've kind of been like in a different boat in the sense of like, so like my mom wasn't born in Mexico like my grandparents were. They taught me Spanish though. I lived with them basically for like my first 5 years of my life. And they taught me Spanish and they taught me, for the most part how to speak Spanish, and we used to, read the Bible in Spanish and all that stuff. And so she would.
It's so true. Bibles are so powerful.
Yeah. And so like I would read it. She would read me verses at night before we'd go to sleep. And so that was a big part of learning Spanish. And so like I wasn't, and I'm just being honest here. Like I didn't grow up like loving the culture, the Mexican culture, because I didn't grow up in it really, like, because my mom wasn't like, she just wasn't in it like that. You know, she was Chicana, she very Tejana, like, you know, like going to like the clubs and dancing like norteñas and stuff like that. And I know norteñas are like, you know, in Mexico too, but like, you know, like I said,
it's different.
Tex-Mex, very different, very different.
Tex-Mex is so different.
Very different.
Because it takes the best of like both sides and kind of mixes it. It's a whole new identity.
So it's
and
not
phenomena.
the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same. So that's how I grew up for the most part. And my grandparents are pastors. So they, like, whenever I would go over to their house and be with them, and even though they were like full on, you know, Mexican, I didn't grow up, I guess, in a sense, with a full like kind of Mexican household experience either, because they're pastors, they're Christian, they do things a little, like, you know, differently, and some things are in the culture and some things aren't, because, you know, it's maybe against their faith and stuff like that. So like I never really got the full, I guess, experience. So
agreed.
I had to like grow up and learn to appreciate it, and learn to like want to speak in Spanish, and learn to be proud of my people, learn to be proud of like my brown skin, because for the longest I hated that I was dark, because I would get bullied for it.
Yeah.
And so, and you could probably attest to that, whether
100%.
it's you or just your friends around you. Like
everything you're sharing is just like such a common experience for so many of us, right? And one, it's interesting because you're not just like, one, you're not from here, you're not from there. Two, you are also in like the Bible bubble, right?
Yeah.
So in the Bible bubble means we don't get to do Dia de los Muertos. We don't get to do Halloween. We don't get to do a lot of cultural things because of, you know, the faith. So you're also like, you're capped by multiple things. And it's so interesting to kind of see like the limitations that kind of holds and puts on us. Like when we come into these places that expect us to completely embrace all of it, right? So it's so interesting, because even Latinos, like if you don't celebrate Dia de los Muertos, it's kind of like dishonoring too. Like it's almost like it's a slap in the face to everybody in so many different ways. And I love that you kind of bring that up when you were talking about like how your parent, like you were talking about like your skin too. Like a lot of our faith was brought in from Europeans, and the beauty standard, because again, going back to language, the beauty standard was instilled in us just as much as the language, right? And the beauty standards from Europe, everybody was light. So of course you had all these white people coming in who are pasty, and that's not us, right? Like our ancestors were clearly morenos, they were dark skinned, and to them, like we were unpleasant, we were different. And of course, when someone's different and it's not the same, there's always fear attached, there's always the unknown. And of course, like the way that they typecast us, and they saw us as an opportunity to be able to like take advantage of, because once they found gold and they found resources and they found all the things that they had here, of course they had to like make sure that they had like this superiority inferiority complex, and like that plays into it. And it's just interesting because it's like the faith, it's always so much bigger than like what we're taught to see. We're taught to see everything in a very simple way, but there's so many layers behind that I think like we don't talk enough about. So we all grow up kind of having this self-hate. And for me, again, like my college years were like so instrumental for me to discover a lot about myself, because they taught me how to criticize media, how to look into it critically and say, oh, when the media presents this to you, or they only show you this, if the whole staff is only white, like of actors, they're the cast, right, is only white actors, and there's no representation for it, you're taught to think like, oh man, like only celebrities, famous people are good looking. And if it's like, if we're not there, if we're not seen with wealth or whatever it is that they're showing us on the TV, then it's like, we're not really that valuable. Because we only see light-skinned people on the TV who are good looking, living these amazing fantasy dream lives, right? That we all kind of desire to have to some degree, right? So if we're not there, the representation is so important. That's why we've like really rooted for all these people who've come in the media little by little. And it's like some of them weren't even the best examples of society, but we were like, man, at least there's someone who's brown, someone in there showing like that we have some value to society. But the truth is that the people who controlled the media have those beauty standards, and they want to make sure that they make us feel that way. You know, it's like they colonized this land, and they want to make sure that the rest of us know like they're still superior to others, which is really sad. But that's why we continue to have, you know, the racism that we have from like past presidents, from, you know, all these different movements, these hate crimes that are very specifically targeted towards minorities.
Yeah.
And I don't even like to say minorities anymore. One of my girlfriends corrected me the other day and she was like, we're marginalized people groups, you know? Because it's not that we are smaller and someone's a majority and someone's a minority.
Yeah.
It's like the language, everything that we say has power. So we have to like destroy these words.
It's like that meme that was kind of going around. That's true. It's like people make fun of me for messing up a word in English, but like I'm actually really smart in Spanish though. Like, you know, 'cause like my wife sometimes will struggle with like articulating a sentence in English, like not super crazy, but like sometimes it's not hitting her as fast as it should, and she'll be able to say it like that in Spanish. You know, and it's just like, you do realize that even though like English is not my first language, like I could do the same thing you're doing, like in my like actual language, in my zone of comfort,
of familiarity of where I've grown up. Yeah.
And so just that whole like thing of like, man, like for the longest I hated my skin. I was being bullied for like, I even wanted to like change my name. I was like, Mom, is there any way I can change my name to this name? Because everyone likes this person who's named this. And so it's like, it's been this like constant or this consistent, I guess for me, like growth of like being comfortable in my own skin and being comfortable with my culture and appreciating my culture and appreciating where we come from and having that real like honor and respect for like people like my grandparents who traveled here and who literally crossed the border. And my grandpa got deported 3 times and came right back and just like really put on a will to provide for his family and like be there. And like it's funny, the company that I'm at now, he worked there actually way back in the day, and he was a roofer there. And you know, and it's almost like a legacy that we're carrying on, you know, even though we don't own the company. But it's like my grandpa worked there, my uncles worked there, and it's just like now I'm there, and I feel like I'm pushing something forward that they were able to start, all because they took a chance and all because they said, you know what, let me come here to somewhere where I have no idea about, I have no clue what's going on here, but I'm going to figure out a way. And that's like the name of the game, right? For us and our families and our culture. It's like, we don't have it all figured out, but we will find a way. And that's something that I've grown to really appreciate, which is like, kind of like what you said about, you know, on TikTok and stuff like that. Like I was talking to my wife and I said, it's really cool, like, you know, being on TikTok and looking at these young kids grow up and really embrace their culture, like really embrace like who they are and who their parents are and where they're from. Because like you see them playing like all kinds of like Mexican music, like in class in school now. And I tell her all the time, like if I was going to high school today, like I would thrive, because I'm like, man, this is so cool. Like even like teachers are more like receptive to like different things that are different and not necessarily the way maybe they grew up and stuff like. So it's like really cool to see it unfold and see more and more people, I guess for lack of better terms, warming up to the idea of not everyone has to look like me.
Yeah. And I think like I love that you're like talking about all of that, because it has to start with these vulnerable conversations, right? Like I always tell people, like, you know, I grew up being very whitewashed. You know, it's like, yeah, I went to Mexico. Yeah, I grew up in the border where it's rich in history and it's rich in like every aspect of like cultural preservation, because we still have the food that's coming from the border. We have the people who are coming directly from the border who's speaking Spanish, born and raised in Mexico. And it's like we have all of this exposure, you know, and yet I sought so hard to be approved and loved by my white church community. And it's like, we went to a Baptist church, and I really wanted to be accepted and loved by these people who, one, I saw were wealthier, you know, had these like really functional households, some stuff very much, but then there's other things that I saw in retrospect weren't as great, you know.
Results may vary
later. Yeah, you know, and it's like there were certain things that I saw that I'm like, okay, like it's more organized, it's more, but it's because they had so much education too. Like there's so much that they were like set up for success with from like generations before, you know, that I was kind of like, okay, I see some value in it, but I wanted it so badly, not just because of those things, but it's because I saw that there was the way, again, I had been taught from a young age through media, was that these people are more valuable than me. So I want to associate myself as much as I can with them so that I too have value. But the thing is that you find that like no matter how much you try to accommodate somebody where they're at, especially with whiteness, you'll never be enough.
Yeah.
You'll never be enough for them. And you'll still be seen as less than to some degree, because whiteness is very systemic and it's very close knit. Like, unless you are white and unless you are culturally white and unless, like, you know, like there's so much in there. And it's like, as you talk about it, like it brings back so much of like my journey and process of like really deconstructing and unraveling these truths. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, I love that, like, young people our age are not going to have that burden, because so many people have come before us that have like been slowly dismantling these systems to show us like we can be proud and it's okay to be proud. And it's like not just of a flag, but of like every part of the culture. The norteñas, like I was taught to not like duranguenses and norteñas, and it's like, that's ghetto.
I used to hate that music.
You see, like
I used to tell my bro, turn that off. I'm not trying to hear that. Like, I don't want to hear that. Turn it off. Like,
it's so ghetto, right?
It's ghetto.
But who taught us that was ghetto,
and it's
right?
just like, yeah, like, you know, the system.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
The system taught us that it was ghetto. And it's like, you know, we'd look at Hollywood movies and it's like, you'd see like the main characters pull up next to like somebody in their truck playing that music all loud, and like they made them look ghetto. There was judgmental looks. Like, we were taught to think that that was embarrassing. And the truth is again, it's a preservation of culture and like where we come from. Like norteñas is all about that, right? And again, we didn't know any better, and I don't hold myself like accountable in the sense that like I'm not like guilting myself and saying like, you know, because there was so much more in raps that was at play to make sure that I never felt proud of my culture or embraced my culture. Yeah. So now it's like, I feel like I go so hard now because I was so on the wrong side, of the spectrum. Yeah. But I think it's because of that. There was so much self-hate. There was so much, and that's not even just like within like the States, right? Like, I always talk about this because half of my family is like European white, and they're in Mexico, right? So I have like my cousins who are jaques, which is like French hair, like they're from like the French lineage, right? Of people that came and immigrated to Mexico, and they became very wealthy from Mexico. And like my cousins are like white, you know? And some of my cousins are like white with blonde hair, blue eyes, and like they come here, they blend in perfectly, and they don't have no problems, no racism, problems. No nothing, right? They do not get pulled over at border patrol checks, nothing. Like my cousins can like pretty much pass whatever they want to do, but in Mexico, they're also seen as like kings and queens because the value system is the same way in Mexico. Novelas, all white staff, blonde hair, blue eyes, super light skinned people. We never see Latinos who are brown skinned on media or TV, even in Mexican TV, right? So all of it is still very deeply ingrained in the culture, and we're finally seeing the tides turn, even in Mexican novelas, right? But that, it's like, it was all at play because the people who own the media, who own the TV, who own, you know, all of these different stations were the ones that have been keeping us from being able to see the people we needed to see. And TikTok has allowed us to do that. Anybody can become famous on TikTok. Anybody has a voice. Anybody has power on TikTok. So now we can see everyone who has value.
Or at least see different perspectives. Okay, like 100%. You're saying this. Okay, that's cool. Let me see what this person is saying. Okay, there's kind of a little bit of similarity here, but let me also check this person. And it's like you can get multiple perspectives.
100%.
And now you can make a decision for yourself rather than tune into one or two stations and I got to make a 50-50 choice of who am I gonna rock with, you know? And so it's like it's so cool to like see it all unfold in real time. Like, this is happening in real time. Like,
you can spend 50 minutes on TikTok and you will hear every perspective on Gaza, Israel right now, right? It's the same thing with, I feel like, cultural heritage everywhere. Like, when all of the stuff was happening with Gaza and Israel, the first thing that I was hearing was Hamas is a terrorist group. It is doing all of this. And it's like, Palestinians are guilty of all of this, right? And it put Israel in a positive spotlight, right? Making it seem like they were victims in all of this, right? And then it's like, we get on TikTok, we start to see all these perspectives. It's like, oh no, there's 70 years of all of this has been happening. There's way more history behind this. It's been happening. It's a lot more
at this time, and it's like,
and then it's like, then it's unraveling. The numbers of losses are way higher in Gaza, and it's like, it's not just about Hamas, and it's like Israel's the most powerful like military. Like, it literally is one of the most powerful military forces in the world. Yeah. And then it's like, we're hearing so much more than what CNN, any of these other perspectives would give us. And I think like it kind of gives us perspective for how we need to handle media in every sense, right? Not just in one area, not just politically, not just in cultures, or like everything that we're seeing in current events has been framed to make us see things a very specific way. But again, we look at the conglomerates, like who owns all these media companies? Yeah. It's the same people. So why would I want to listen to the perspective of one owner who has
control over everything,
control over 6 different major companies that hold media, right? Whether it's CNN, Fox, etc. Like, I'm sure they're all owned by the same 3 giants, right? Yeah. So we have to be very careful about hearing everything that we hear on the media, because it's very controlled and it's very limited. And again, TikTok is cool because we're seeing firsthand videos of everything that happens around the world. We're not just hearing it from a news. At this point, nobody even cares to hear from news reporters. Yeah. We'd rather look at somebody posting a video from their house. The way like, that feels more authentic than it does. Different. Yeah.
It's just so different the way we get our information now. And it's very important to not rush to jump to a conclusion.
100%.
You can't.
Yes.
You got to be very careful. Somebody asked me, because I'm very outspoken. I'm very, I'll give an opinion with no issue. And someone asked me the other day, what is your stance on the war in Israel, and Gaza, and all that? And I said, well, generally speaking, war is bad. No matter, it just
war sucks.
It's terrible. I said, but number 2, if you're asking me for specifics, I don't know enough specifics to sit here and give you the answer you're looking for with me. Let me do some research. Let me, look up some stuff. Let me read. Let me learn. And then we can come back and have a discussion. And I think that's also very important too. Like, in general, you shouldn't jump to conclusions. You want to make sure that you have, the knowledge or the history of knowing exactly what's going on. And just like we said, with culture, and
I think there's a lot of compassion that needs to be played into this, right? Because we're taught to like remove our emotions completely and look at fact, right? The truth is, we don't even have many facts on our table. We don't live there. We're not experiencing it. We don't have grandparents who've experienced it that can tell us stories and have been there firsthand. And then on top of that, it's like, we don't know how many emotions are loaded into everything that's going in there. There is a lot of identity going into that, right? Like, people who are Jewish are feeling very hurt right now. People who are Palestinian are feeling very hurt right now. This has been going on for a long time. It's very generational and it's very emotionally loaded. Yeah. And I think like a lot of people right now are trying to just look at facts and spew out things without looking at like, man, it's like, I can't imagine the hurt. I can't imagine like how depressing it must be to see a country shatter on both ends. To see governments ruin their people and allow their people to die like that. And I think like I've seen so many responses and people be quick to kind of root for one team or another. And I have not seen it at all as like a team, right? Like there's no team. This is not a football game. We're not looking at this is not a fanaticism of like a game that we're looking at. We're looking at like very serious events of people who need real emotion and compassion right now. Yeah. And I think like that's what's been really sad. I think kind of experiencing a lot of that, right? Is that people kind of want to quickly get something out of you. And I'm just like, dude, I don't like your response at the beginning was, I think, so appropriate. It's like, war really sucks and I hate it. And I think it's like ugly. And like, if we're going to go into like a Christian perspective, right, is that we're seeing how like sin has entered the chat room and it has ruined everything. Like it has ruined so much in humanity that it's like we're seeing so much brokenness and like harm that comes from the sin that's within man, right? That like is very much like spoken to us like in the word. We read about it, we know that. And the only true answer for any of this and the restoration that like the world needs is Christ. Like we're taught that like the love of Christ, covers a multitude of sins. And like, honestly, like the only response that should be coming out of every Christian right now is like, I'm praying for this country I am saddened by this, because I'm sure that saddens God's heart to see people die that are made in his image, and all human life is valuable. It's like, I am praying that like God really does a work and like preserves these people, like removes people from harm, right? Like where he can. But it's like, you know, again, I also understand the deep realities of sin in our world that like lead to colonization, lead to like all of these very oppressive systems, right? And I don't trust our world governments. I don't trust this, because they're man-made systems. They're not God-made systems. But I have to lean into the church. And it's like, it's sad to see the church not always like really take that good, like to take that solid stance of like, we're taking the higher road. We can't support anybody politically. We're not like, our political ideology is not of this world, right? We are neither Democrat, we are neither Republican. We're politically homeless. And Christians right now, it's like, we have to be the ones that are most supportive, compassionate, like finding ways to be resourceful and helpful towards both sides, right? And it's just, it's hard. It's hard because so many people want to like bring in scripture into this. And like, it's a really sensitive subject, you know, that I think I don't even want to carry on more into it, because there's so much, right?
Like, it's a podcast within itself. Like
it really is.
It's just, it's a whole thing within itself. And just to kind of switch gears, but kind of stay within that kind of realm. Like, this is why I feel like community is so important. Man, what are you doing in your community? What are you doing with the people around you? And what are you creating, big or small, that will create a ripple effect that will change a generation, that will change someone who then might go do what maybe you thought you were going to do, not in a bad way, but maybe like, okay, like maybe God didn't allow me to take it the way I thought I was supposed to, but because I sowed into this person and planted the seed into this person, they're going to take it. And that's what it's all about. And so like, that's what's been so important with like kind of what we do at La Familia. And then also like kind of with you and your business. So it's like you have your own business, woman-owned business. And so like, how has that been for you? Just, and how is the journey for that, and kind of pushing other women and empowering other women and creating a community that can walk in confidence and also show others in their community and the world that, hey, like we can also like make an impact with, you know, with this business and what we're doing. Everything
is always small, right? And I think we look at like every little detail that goes into scripture, right? It's always in the small moments. And I feel like we always overlook the small moments for like these big woes and like these big moments. And it's like, you and I know we cannot change war, right? That's a huge phenomena. But I can be very proactive in my day-to-day life, in my prayer life, in my mentoring, and like the people that like I am investing in every day, who is within my immediate influence, right? And I think like that at the end of the day, like I love that you kind of pushed back into still staying on topic, but like really taking it to like where the work really happens.
Where it starts, you know, where it really,
The salon is like, first off, like that's a huge part of my testimony, right? Like I saw God bring so much provision into my family's life through the beauty industry. My mom was an immigrant, a single parent to 3 daughters. And she came here, she didn't even speak the language, right? So my mom literally, without an education, middle school was like the highest education. Like I think she took like maybe 2 years of like high school, but didn't finish, right? And she got married to my dad. He brought her here. My dad divorced her and left her. And my mom just like managed to like literally raise us and do like literally to like go into our education, make the most that we could from here. And like, she will tell you like, all of our successes, my younger sister's a nurse, my older sister's an executive at a nonprofit, and like she runs her own consulting business. I'm running this business, and like all of us do extremely well. Like, and she will tell you like everything that has happened with my daughters, them going to university, them doing their thing, like that has been like God's grace and favor over our lives and his provision, right? Like she will never take credit for it. There was a lot of hustle and a lot of tears and sweat that came on my mom's behalf, and a lot of sacrifice of her not always being able to be there as a mom because she had to literally raise us, you know, and like provide for us. But she will tell you like that was the Lord's favor over our lives. And when I think about like how the beauty industry has like deeply impacted me, because I have upward mobility, I have access to all these things, I was able to like get a cool education and then get really cool jobs afterwards that paid me really well. But then it's like those jobs ended up being like so unsatisfying because I didn't see the purpose behind them, right? Long term. And when I got let go during the pandemic, I was like, I'm just a number to these companies, especially these big corporations. They don't care about me. Like, I didn't even get like a letter with my name on it when they like told me they let me go.
Yeah.
I was literally like, dear employee, you know, and I had worked under like the founder and like a CEO, a COO of this company. And like, I didn't even hear directly from them. When I wrote to them saying thank you, to like say, hey, like this was a really great opportunity. I learned a lot. Like the owners of the company didn't even know I was being let go. And they were just like, man, I'm so sorry to hear that you got let go. It's like, we love you so much. But like, I didn't, like, there was no action behind that. They were okay with them letting me go. They didn't say anything. They were like, I'm so sad, like whatever. And I'm just like, okay, well, you're sad, but I just bought a house and you just let me go. Like, you know, it was very impersonal. And they tried offering my job like months later, but I didn't take it because at that point I didn't feel valued anymore by that company. And like, I come into Bloom, like the idea of Bloom comes a year after me being let go. I took on a super chill job, helping a hair salon owner with his business. And at this point I was doing like an organization business on the side, helped him with his business. And within 6 months, I turned that entire place around. Like, this man had a clientele of 90% women, and the whole salon was like gray, it was dark, it was very rustic, very much like a man cave kind of feel. It was nice, but it was not for women, you know? And 90% of his clientele were women. He didn't even have like pads or tampons in the restroom. Like, I was like, when I was there, I just made little detail, like little changes, right? And you would swear, like these people were like, oh my gosh, Victoria, like like the hairstylists were like, you've done so much to this space. Like it's so much more efficient, organized some things for him, made it like easier for them to work in the space. I thought these were very basic things. I'm just like, anybody should do this, you know, like it's kind of common sense or whatever, but your natural talents aren't always necessarily what somebody else's strengths are, right? So you can see the value you bring into spaces. And in those 6 months, I transformed the space and I saw his numbers go up. I saw people booking in more clients, doing more. And then I made his space get so efficient that he let me go. He was like, you don't even need to be here. Like the system's already set and you made it so nice that like,
so good.
I don't even really need you here anymore. And I'm just like, wow, like that's really messed up.
Yeah.
I'd kind of hinted at like looking at different opportunities too. Like he had like a coach for the salon and I was like, you know what? I'm thinking like this might not be like what I do long term, you know? But I was really just in a moment of doubt. But that woman took it literally and I'm like almost 100% sure I got let go right after that phone call, which by the way, these were supposed to be like anonymous, like they're supposed to be confidential conversations with this coach. And I got let go within like 2-3 days of this conversation. And I was like, well, oh, well, I was like,
so much for that.
Everything happens for a reason, right? And I didn't see it in that moment. I was kind of pissed. And I was like, man, my humility just went down even more. It's like, I just got let go from one job, like my corporate job. I took on this job that I thought was like an even lesser role to like help a guy manage a salon. And I got let go from that. Like my humility is like,
You're like,
I'm being real humbled right now. Okay. Like, and I feel like a very competent person. So I was like, man, this really sucks. Like now I just really don't feel like I add much value, right? But I did fall in love with like helping them at the salon. Like I fell in love with serving the hairstylist. It made me think a lot about my mom. And I was like, man, if my mom had someone like me, she would have been booking all these people. She would have been doing all this. Like I was offering all these resources and this was like in the design district. So it's all like these white hairstylists and they're charging like $400 for services. Like they're like, literally, it's like they're really, it was just insane how much money they were charging and like how high end it was, right? And I'm like, I'm bringing all these resources to people who don't even need me though. It's like, this all needs to go back to Latinos. Like, and like, I kind of just feel like this fire just started really burning up in me. Like, I'm just like, you know what? Like, I'm kind of angry that he let me go. But I'm also angry because I made this business way better than it was. And this guy's been doing it for 6 years and I made it better. And I just kind of like wouldn't sit on the idea. Like there were so many things that I did, like side gigs. And one side gig that I did was kind of like a pivotal moment for me to like open the salon. I was helping this production studio here in Dallas and they had the Ulta Pro team
Okay.
Like they were doing
Yeah.
like a whole promo for Ulta. It's like the big makeup store with hair products and everything. And they had the pro team there, and all these people are like major influencers. They own a lot of salons. They're like all the big players in the game, like the beauty world, you know? And Ulta has recruited them, hired them, and having them make all these cool videos for like, you know, their consumers to like be exposed to them. And these people just really inspired me. One, they were like these huge characters, but they were mad humble. You would have never known that some of these people owned 30 salons in the US, that some of them were being represented by 5 major brands like Schwarzkopf, Amica, etc. Like they had these big brands behind them. And you would never know because they were so kind. And as I was assisting them on the production set, I remember like I messed up somebody's Starbucks order and they were like so gracious about it. I was feeling so bad, you know? And they were like, oh, it's okay. I'll drink this. Like, just remember for the next time. And like, we were on set for like 7 days and I remembered it for the rest of the set, but they were just really incredible people. So anywho, all that to say, when they were telling me about all of their career moves, they had salons. They started doing these things and they're like, yeah, I love doing this. I love contributing to the beauty world. And I was like, you know what? I can do that. Like clearly beauty keeps coming up in my world and I want to figure out how I can contribute. And like, honestly, like it means so much to be able to pass it forward some way because this is how my mom brought our family forward. Yeah. So I started in Oak Cliff because I'd bought a house here. I loved Oak Cliff. I felt home in Oak Cliff. Oak Cliff feels like the border, right? And I'm from El Paso. I told my husband, we need to buy a house here. Like, this is where my people are, and I want to be here. I don't want to be anywhere else. The rest of Dallas is, it no tiene sazón. I was like, it doesn't. So I'm like, I want to be where my people are, and I want to feel like I'm at home, not just physically, but culturally. So I started here. I started doing some research, started looking at like what was needed in the marketplace. I wanted it to be business owned. I wanted people to have their own autonomy, control over their own lives, never work for an employer. All my experiences with employers were just so crappy. Yeah. I was like, I don't even want people who work in the space to see me as an employer. I want them to do their own thing, and I'm just serving them in this space, making sure that they can run their businesses successfully. Yeah. And I'm like a resource for them to be able to like succeed, you know? And we now have 13 businesses running out of this space. That's awesome. Like I've made sure that they all have their LLCs, DBAs, EIN numbers, because people don't teach us about taxes. They don't teach us how to do basic business math and etiquette and professionalism. And that's really lacking in the beauty industry. So I really looked at my market and I'm like, this is what this industry needs. And so I said, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do better than that mofo who let me go. And, you know, I'm going to serve my people simultaneously while passing my mom's legacy forward, you know? And it just was like, I knew that this was what I needed to do. And honestly, it's like a very impromptu and indirect discipling because I'm mentoring people every day, and I'm doing life with people every day, whether it's through their pregnancies, whether it's through their losses, whether it's, you know, the difficulties that come with like a business. Like, I just love being here to support people. And I feel like in so many ways, like just being there, it allows you to have like a unique access to people's lives to speak into them, right? Yeah. And just being there to serve them. Like, I don't expect anything from anybody here, right? I let them expect the world out of me, but I do not expect anything from anybody here because I'm here to serve them at the end of the day, right? The success of their business is determined by me being able to offer them everything that they need to succeed in here. So if they're not succeeding, I'm not succeeding as a business, right? And a lot of that comes from like my Christian background, like knowing Christ and knowing that like the Son of Man came to serve, not to be served. Not to be served, yeah. So it's so important for me to make sure that like everything that I do here is centered on my team, right? Like sometimes I feel like I've put more boundaries in place now for me to take care of myself too, because at the beginning I was bending myself backwards. And Christ doesn't want that for us either. He also wants us to take care of ourselves because we can't pour out of our cup what we don't have from our daily bread, right? Exactly. So honestly, to kind of end, like the super long way to answer your question.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Is that, you know, like for me, a lot of that comes into play with like the small work here. It's like the way that I live and breathe in this space impacts their businesses and allows me to be able to speak life into that. Yeah. Not that that's been perfect, because obviously like we learn, we're still human, and like there's a lot of surrendering that happens daily to make sure that like I am the best version of myself that God wants me to be when I come into this space so I can serve my team well, right?
Yeah.
But there's definitely been a lot of mistakes. Lots of were said that I wish I'd never said, or like moments that were not my hottest moments.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the end of the day, I know like perfection is not required of me, but progress is definitely required of me so that I can be a light in the world, right?
For sure.
And owning those mistakes has been so humbling. But yeah, that's really like the way it works out in this space.
That's so awesome that, like, you said your mother, she was an esthetician, right?
Yeah.
So did she always do that? Or did she kind of have, like, you know, like different jobs before? And then
she was a
ended
nursing assistant first.
Okay.
Her dream was to always become an esthetician. She was like, I just want to do this. I don't want to do anything else. I just want to be an Esty, right? She wanted to be in the beauty world and she knew it. And for her, like, becoming a nurse's assistant was just like the secure job that she can get real quick, you know, before she can get into that next step. So she became a nurse's assistant, and that allowed her to then like go into beauty school, open up new doors. My mom was doing like, at one point, my mom was working like 2-3 jobs just to like put food on the table.
Yeah.
And man, I remember that time. It's like, even with food stamps and like government support, like it was just not enough. Like there was so much my mom had to do because there was 3 of us. She didn't have family here. Her family was in Chihuahua. And like my dad's family, like they're all doctors, lawyers, and they live in the US and stuff, but we're so estranged from that side of the family because they're very whitewashed, you know? Like they're very Americanos. Like we don't, like nobody speaks Spanish in that side except my grandma, you know? And some of them, it's kind of cool because I've reconnected with them later in life and they're trying to embrace their Latino side, which is really beautiful to see, like God heal a lot of those relationships. Awesome. But man, like we were so estranged during that time that my mom literally did this by herself. Like she didn't have support. My grandma, like my maternal grandmother didn't have resources to provide us with. Like, you know, she was doing this all alone in a country where like she had lost her husband, the one familiar, secure point. And my dad was a doctor. Yeah. So like she's lost all security. My dad's really just not played like a role in being a father. So she's literally trying to do so much. And she managed like first with her nurse assisting job, like she did like other little things here and there, but it was mostly like, you know, like she did like a little bow making business. My mom was a hustler. She was trying to do what she could where she could, you know?
And I relate to that a lot because my mom also was a single mother, and it was me and my sister, and she had, you know, multiple jobs, and, you know, always, that's why I say like when I grew up kind of with my grandparents, like the first 5 years of my life basically is because, you know, she had to drop me off with my grandparents, you know, she goes to work, and then just that seeing that example of like a strong woman and someone who wasn't going to let their circumstance hold them back. Yeah. But further prove that it can be done. It 100%. Can be done. And sorry, also I keep looking down, but it's my notes. Just FYI. I'm listening to you answer, but I'm looking down, and I don't want you to think I'm like no. I have notes that I'm looking at.
You have to make sure you get through your bullet points.
Yeah.
We have limited time. There's so many things to talk about.
There's so many. We're gonna have to run it back. Someday. I kind of want to close with this. What are some next goals you have for your business here at Bloom? Whether that be just here in the next maybe year or so, and then what are some goals maybe you have like for the city of Dallas, just within your business and kind of what you want to achieve?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, those are like really good questions. I might ask you to repeat in a moment, but I want my team to be solid. I have started doing one-on-ones with them, and like I am really loving like these connections that I'm forming with them on like an intimate level of like just meeting with each one of them, hearing their hearts, their goals, like what do they want to do, like cheering them on and saying like, hey, these are the strengths that I've noticed in you, and they're like in the time that you've been here, I've noticed these things, and just really giving them something to like look forward to. Like, man, like you've noticed those changes in me in like 6 months. It's like, that's insane, right? But then also like, hey, but these are also opportunities that I've noticed that I think could be, if you like really hone this in, you would be like 100, you know, like you would be a top-notch barber or like the best colorist that there is if you did these 2 little things, whether it's sales tactics or like, you know, just things that I've noticed like in their day-to-day, because I'm here working with them 3 days out of the week. So I'm on the front desk listening. I hear all the conversations, their interactions, and I get really excited just being able to like, you know, see the growth kind of slowly develop. And like, this is something that I want to consistently do to just make them a really like, I want to be able to do so well with my team that like they're like equipped to do everything on their own. Cause I feel like at first, if you had asked me like maybe like a week ago, I would have told you, oh yeah, we're expanding. Like we want to open our doors to even more beauty professionals to have this. But right now I feel like my core is what I need to do. I want to be able to build my core so strong that like, if that is something in the future, in the near future, whatever, it's like, I want this team to be so good that it's like, whether or not I'm here or I'm gone, they're able to do everything so well. So right now my goal is that my team is like, their books are packed. They're doing really well. They're financially savvy, right? Like I teach a lot of classes on like financial planning, taxes. So like I'll bring in guest speakers to come talk about these things. And it's like, I want my team to be able to be financially set to where like they're creating generational wealth for those that come after them. And they're set, you know, it's like, yeah, they don't have degrees. Maybe they didn't go to college or whatever, but shoot, these people can make a good amount of money.
Make it happen, yeah.
And it's like their options and opportunities to make those opportunities are limitless, you know? And I want them to be able to do that. So first and foremost, I want my team to be so solid and so grounded. And I want to be able to retain all those people. Like I have 13 people right now here. And although all of them have like decided to go on to doing, you know, yearly contracts, because that's like my longest package, right? Like they can do month to month, 6 months, 9 months, or, you know, a year. And they've all gone on to do a year package, but I want to keep them beyond that year. You know, I want them to be, and some people I'm not going to, and that's totally fine because I teach them to dream. And sometimes dreaming means they go bigger than MySpace. Shoot, you know? And so I just want them to feel great. And if they feel good, they have the education they need to succeed in this world, I already feel great because those are the very reasons why I came. I wanted people to do that the way that I wish my mom had had those resources. Yeah. If my mom had had me 10 years ago, she would have been balling a lot sooner. That's not true. She's already a baller and she already does her own thing. Like, I love that she's like this single woman in her 50s and it's like she wants to go to Paris tomorrow. She's going to do it. She just got back from Paris.
Yeah.
And awesome. Like she went to Portugal and Spain and like she can just do that at the whim because she saved up her money. She's worked hard. She's been able to do that. And I want that for every person in here, that if they have children, families, etc., that whatever recession looks like, they're great. No matter what the world looks like, they're consistently doing good, right? Or actually, consistently getting better.
Getting better, going up,
Right? So anywho, that's like my current goal for my space. The other one you said, for the city of Dallas, it's so important to play a role where you know you've been skilled and you've been given talent to like fulfill a role in a very specific place. And for me, that just so happens to be that like I've attracted almost every community organizer that's like in Oak Cliff, right? Because I'm so outspoken about gentrification, about equity, making sure that the opportunities that are open to every white neighborhood is also open to Latino neighborhoods and Black neighborhoods. And if we don't have access to all those things that the city has, then it's like, why, like a lot of things can't happen. And for me, the first way that I started to get involved with this was that I realized in 10 years, if I don't buy property, it's going to be really hard for me to stay here as a Latino-owned business because I was able to strike a pretty good deal here. I was able to work with, you know, Latino landlords who at first were very accommodating for me to be here. It's not been that smooth the entire way, but you know, I know that like early on I had a lot of favor because I looked like my landlords, you know, and like I look like most of my community, and that's helped me out with my business because Latinos were the first people to support me, you know? And I like the more that I've gotten involved with stuff, I realized like my business won't be here in 10 years if I don't like look at how the city works, how property works, how taxing works, how, you know, rent works. And if I'm not smart about this, I can't keep my business in the same area for years to come. And I realized that like if I'm having difficulty with that and I have an education, how much more are all the other Latino-owned businesses going to struggle with this if they don't know either? And what's cool is that I started a neighborhood association. We're down the street and we called it Casa Guanajuato, or we called it the Guanajuato Neighborhood Association. And Casa Guanajuato is right there, and it's significant to our neighborhood because they've helped immigrants get assimilated into this country. They offer resources. The old ice house is right here. We're literally in the heart of Old Cliff, and we're thriving. And here, it's like we're just teaching people to survive and thrive and like get here and do well. And our neighborhood association just really kind of ties into that because now we're accessing all the homes that are owned by Latinos over here. And knowing that a lot of them are under the, I wanted to say like the low, it's like the low income gap. Yeah, they're in the low income gap. So a lot of them can't afford to do renovations. They can't do all these things to their houses. But I'm like, but there's all these city resources that I'm now discovering can help.
Yeah.
And it's right next to my business. And they've allowed my business to be ingrained in the association, right? So now I can help Latinos get access. We had a representative at our last meeting where she talked about code and like, who do you ask for help? A woman was like, this tree is growing into my house, but it's on the street. And it's like, is the city take care of that? And the woman was like, yes, the city can take care of that. And you don't have to worry about it. Like, you know, there are certain things. If you don't have enough light posts, if there's speed bumps and you're worried about somebody speeding here and running over your kid, you can call the city for that, right?
Yeah.
So like teaching people to just have access to the government, it's very simple stuff. But if we're not taught these things, we don't know how to call the government and ask for it. So like, I feel like my business has become like a catalyst for other things in the community. We did our first few meetings here in the salon.
That's awesome.
And now, like, Casa Guanajuato's opened up a door for us to do it because now we got kids running and sometimes we got scissors in here, so I can't have kids.
Yes.
But, you know, the meetings allow us to like really connect with the community. And now, like, I've had some of those people come into the salon and get cuts. And I wasn't trying to do that. But they just, you know, like the way that the support happens is like you build and you support your community. They want to build and support you too.
Yeah.
And that's how like Latinos, like we just unite and we build with each other is if like we all use the resources that we have to like pass it on to others, right? So anywho, I feel like that was a very long-winded answer.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect because you got to give the context. Like you got to like, if you're going to give it, you got to give the answer. So I love it. I love it. And I'll close with this. Jesse, can you pass me my bag? Please. It's over here.
Yeah, I'm on around.
Oh, okay. Got you.
We want you in the shot,
you in
Jesse.
we want you in the camera.
We want the people to see who Jesse is, the man behind the camera.
Shout out Jesse, man. Shout out Jesse.
That's a dope bag.
Thank you. Before I open this bag, my cousin is here. We're gonna do a photo shoot with her. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, she's here right now. But your passion is very inspiring. Your love for others is very inspiring, and that's kind of like why I was really hoping for you saying yes to doing a podcast or just even having a conversation, whether we recorded it or not, because like seeing your drive and seeing your passion is just like such an inspiring thing.
Thank you.
And to see it impact the community the way it does is very inspiring. Like when you walk in your purpose, when you walk in what God has called you, like everything will fall into place no matter how you think it is. Like it doesn't matter if you think it's going to fall into place at this time or at this time. It doesn't matter because when you're walking in the purpose, it's going to fall into place regardless. And I feel like that is exactly what's happening with you. Like you didn't try to like be like this segue or this gateway into being able to help your neighbors figure out the resources that the government offers. Like it just happened. But because of your heart and the way you serve people, the way you serve here, the way you serve your community, like God has allowed that to happen, to be like a vessel in your community. So it's like, it's beautiful whenever I ask you, like, what are your goals for the city of Dallas within your business? Like, and you were able to articulate it. And it's because, like you said, you've been open to serving, you've been open to educating yourself. And through your business, people come to you and you're like, hey, like we want to do this. Okay, cool. Like, let's do it. And let's bring awareness to everything that's lacking, like in these low income gap areas, and making sure that our people are taken care of, or at least have the knowledge to know what's going on. And whenever like I see, you know, people like that doing that, people like you doing that, especially like women owned, like Hispanic, Latina, like it's so inspiring. And people need to know, people need to see that it can happen. It is possible. Like we don't always have to feel like we're being set back or like that we can't move forward. And you're like a great example of that.
I really appreciate that. And, you know, I always have to give credit where credit is due, right? And that's like God's grace and favor over my life, right? And I was talking about this the other day. Like God has a calling for all of us, right? Every single one of us plays a very unique role in how we're supposed to contribute to this world. Especially like once we know Him, once we know that calling is in our lives, like it's very much the parable of the talents, right?
Yeah.
Each one of us is given talents to invest back into this world. And what we do with it, like God will give us more, or like, you know, you can read the parable for yourself, but the point is that like we each play a part in something, and how we want to like use those talents that God has given us. It's like we want to bring more abundance into the kingdom, and we want to invest and like be laborers in the harvest of like what God is doing, right? And I think like for me, I just want to be able to like use what God has given me to make sure that like the people who need to receive that on the other end, right? Because my life was so impacted by the love of God. Like when I came to know Christ at the age of 14, my life was completely different. I mean, depression, etc. I could talk about it another day, but when you've tasted what is good, you cannot keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
You just can't. My life was so healed and transformed. And like, when I think about how much like God has done in my life and like how much blessing I have, like I am truly like everything that I've had in my life has been like God's direction and guidance. But you can't have that unless you take him up on that calling either. And it's like every day he's tugging on people's hearts. Like, I have purpose for you. I have something in mind for you. And if we don't like listen to that calling, like we're missing out on the journey of a lifetime. And it's scary. It's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
There's so much opposition that comes with it. I've lost so much in the last year, but I've also gained so much. And in that time, like I have felt a lot. Like I felt a lot. Like there were so many things, but God has just continued to show himself to be faithful. And that every time I'm scared, I'm worried about a bill, or like when something financial came up, or when something like with my team early on, or when I lost like my dog, who was my perro hijo, like those things were really hard for me this last year. But God, every single time, like comforted me, provided, built a way for me to go through. And I now can speak to that because I took the risk of trusting him. And every one of us has like a risk to take every day. And it's like, yeah, maybe right now it's like we don't have all the crazy viewers or whatever for this podcast, or, you know, and that's not the goal, right? The goal is that the right people who hear this hear it, right?
Yeah.
But who's to say that like God doesn't like grow this into a different viewership and the people that come in here? But you will never be able to grow that if you don't start somewhere, right? And you can't grow somewhere. Like everything is a risk every day, whether it's a social risk, a suicide risk, like a social suicide risk, you know, is what I'm trying to get at, is that like people feel embarrassed to do all these things and take these risks. But I'm like, yo, you're missing out. If you think like you're worried about that tia or your cousins like making fun of you because, you know, Mexicanos are so burlones.
Like
they make fun of everything that we do. You want to try to be successful. They're like, oh, look at Mr. like, fancy pants trying to do his thing. It's like, whatever, dude. Now you think you're better than us. Whatever. It's like they're always going to joke with you and mess with you, right? But if you're thinking about them, and like that's between you and like where God has like these crazy like, you know, journeys and adventures for you to grow and be abundant, like, man, it's like that's nothing, right? Like it means nothing. And I hope that like most people like listening to this just like don't care. Like you really can't care what the world thinks about you.
I love that.
Because if God has something in store for you, that's all that matters. You just need to keep going towards it, no matter how many distractions and things come in between. But anywho, I hope that again it just really helps someone who may hear this just take that risk and be like, okay, God, I'm going to take you up on that calling. Wherever that goes, if it changes directions a million different times, it's like at least you tried and at least you followed God in all of that. And that's all that matters.
Yeah. The thing I always tell people is the best thing you could always do is walk in yourself 100%, but in who God has called you to be. That's like the best place you can be at. And so just to end, I brought you a gift, okay?
Oh, I love gifts. That's like my love language.
Really?
I feel so loved when people give me gifts.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad I brought your gift.
Aw, I already feel so blessed and I don't even know what it is.
So like the whole, I mean, I feel like we relate a lot with like, you know, like with people who like came before us and people just who have been instrumental in our life. Oh my gosh. So I want to give you this. Obviously, like I don't know your size, so if I need to change the size, just let me know.
No, it's okay.
Just let me know.
I'll pull them all off, whatever it is.
But I want you to open it.
Okay.
And so that's.
I'm like, this is so exciting. I freaking love this. Oh my gosh. This is so exciting.
So it's our new.
I love this. The oversized shirts is perfect. I love this.
It's the new drop that we have. It's the La Familia Desde el Cielo. And the whole thing with that was like those who just came before us, like I feel like they, whether like, because we've had family who have passed and then family who are still with us, but it's like we always feel like they've been a gift from God. And so at least for me, my family, the people who have paved the way for me to be here, for you to be here, it's like super important. And it's like, this is who I do it for. Like, I want to be able to honor you in some type of way that I can. And I feel like with this drop, like I really wanted to do that. And I love your story. I love where you come from. I love your mom and everything that she did and all the sacrifice that she made. I relate to it a lot in different ways. And so I was like, what better way to like honor that with
this is beautiful, Tony.
Thank you.
And I hope that other people also see the value that comes with this, because it's so much more than just a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your time.
I truly feel so honored that you even asked. And this is really beautiful. And I think that the people who hear these messages and receive this are going to be immensely blessed by it. So thank you so much. And may God just multiply it times 10.
Thank you.
That every ear who needs to hear it may be open to it, and every eye that needs to see it would see it, because this is so this right here is how we pass it forward, right? We don't just tell a story about our Mexicanaje, right? Or our Latinaje. We're also citizens of heaven, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this kind of just embraces every part of us, because we also see the value of God sees every tongue, nation, and people group. And it's important to recognize that, right? We can't say oh, I don't see color. Well, God sees color, so we all see color. Yeah. And we all see culture. We all see people. And God sees it because he takes the time to tell us about every nation, tongue, and race. And I think this is just such a beautiful homage to that. And I love that you've made room for God in all of this too. So I meant everything I said, and I stand behind it.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on, Victoria. It's been awesome. It's been awesome. Like I said, hopefully one day we can do a part 2 or just have another great conversation.
Oh my gosh, yes.
But
one of many.
So shout out to Victoria, shout out Jesse, for everything, and man, we love y'all. Yeah, look at the tea.
It's so dope.
Fire.
I'm so excited about this. This is awesome.
Thank you again.
So much. I'm gonna give you a hug. This is so great.
All right, guys.
Seriously.
Peace.
Oh, I don't know which camera it was.
Which one was it? Okay.
Okay.